In the early morning of April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant would explode.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
Plant workers and firefighters would rush in to contain the damage, and in doing so expose themselves to lethal amounts of radiation, which in the coming days and months would eventually kill them. The government immediately cut the phone lines to control the spread of information and sent in the military to control access so no one could get in or out without official permission. It would take them over 36 hours before they evacuated some 50,000 people from Pripyat, the closest city to Chernobyl. 2 days later, the government would make an announcement on state media.
От Совета министров СССР. На Чернобыльской атомной электростанции произошла авария. Поврежден один из атомных реакторов. Принимаются меры по ликвидации последствий аварии. Пострадавшим оказывается помощь. Создана правительственная комиссия.
And that was it. That was their announcement, you know? It's just a minor incident. Everything's under control. And the only reason they made that announcement is because other countries had begun detecting radiation that could only have come from the Soviet Union. It was getting too big to cover up, too big to keep secret. The truth was in the air, and there was no denying it any longer. The Soviets, they tried to sweep Chernobyl under the rug, tried to tell everybody it was just a minor little thing, but the world found out the true scale of it eventually. And in the cult classic video game Project Zomboid, the US government does the same. They tell you to stay indoors, to stay calm, to trust the quarantine, everything is gonna be all right. But just like Chernobyl, the lies can't hold forever. And when the truth comes out, it's already too late. For those that don't know, Project Zomboid is an isometric zombie survival game set in 90s Kentucky. It's one of those games that when you die, it's either like, you know, a speed level crash out, or you just kind of sit there staring at the game over screen, kind of like this dude right here. I think what I'm trying to say is it's a pretty difficult game, but you know, I love it a lot. And I think it does a really good job at world building. You know, Zomboid is very clever with it. It will never tell you the story outright, and it won't force you to follow it either. Through television broadcasts or radio, you'll come to find out what's going on both inside and outside of the zone, and as the days progress, so does the story. But here's the problem. The story we're being told on the TV and on the radio is at odds with the reality of the Knox exclusion zone. The broadcasts paint a picture that is not what is actually happening. The government, or at the very least the military, knew what was happening the second it happened. And they lied through their teeth, even as the truth became obvious. This is their official story. Before we jump into the timeline, quick thanks to Rix for letting me use his cinematics. If you want a full lore breakdown, check out his video. It's really solid. And also, the Project Zomboid timeline can be a bit confusing and sometimes contradictory. I just chalk this up to developer oversight, you know, over the years of its development. So if I get some things wrong, apologies in advance. On July 9th, 1993, the government began admitting something had happened. What, we don't know, but they blame it on bad crops or food poisoning. Some reports even indicate that individuals are confused and aggressive. It's also interesting to note that they state officials stress the illness is not airborne. Come the 10th, television and radio broadcasts begin to admit. Police confirm a number of violent incidents related to the sickness. Victims have attacked others in sudden outbursts. Here's the thing though. We as the player start the game on July 9th, and as we can clearly see, the outbreak is in full swing, with pretty much every major urban center in Knox County being overrun with the undead. To add to that, the phone lines have been cut days or possibly even weeks prior, and the military is already in position, having been there for quite possibly days. It seems like these TV or radio broadcasts are, they're delayed, they're a few days behind, and you might ask why that is. Well, the simple answer is the government, or at the very least the military, seized control of the narrative the second the infection had begun. Knowing how bad it was going to be, if they wanted to perform a successful cover-up, they needed to stay ahead of and control every detail that was released to the public. But the lies, they didn't stop there. And as the outbreak, the infection began to spread, so did the fibs required to keep it a secret. And as the days progress, we watch the narrative change in real time. Come the 11th of July, both the TV and radio began addressing the rumors about a quarantine and the military presence in Knox County, but the government officials still denied everything. There is no quarantine, there are no roadblocks, travel remains unrestricted, the rumors are false. The following day, on the 12th, the evidence is beginning to pile up, and we watch as the narrative shifts in real time from full denial to soft admittance. Military vehicles have been sighted on the outskirts of Knox County, but officials stress these are precautionary measures. Even still, there were reports that decontamination teams were deployed to the area to test both the air and water, and their official statement was that the illness is still not airborne. They were testing for it in the air while denying it was capable of being in it. Denials had turned to half-truths. APCs were rolling down the street. Decontamination teams were testing the very air itself. And the public was beginning to demand answers. If the story was already starting to crumble, by the next day, it would fall apart completely. By the 13th, the narrative was too weak. It started to crumble. So overnight, it was replaced. Gone was the calm reassurance from the government, and in its stead was martial law. The Knox exclusion zone was declared. Travel was restricted, communication prohibited, and martial law enacted within the zone itself. In just 4 days, we went from bad crops and isolated violence to full-scale military quarantine, and not once did they admit that it was airborne, it was deadly, and it was probably their fault. They waged a war, but not against a virus, against the truth, against information, and against people. By the 14th and the 15th, the first reports of individuals outside of the exclusion zone getting sick hit the airwaves. And if it's on the news today, you can bet it's been happening already for a few days prior. A virus, an airborne virus, doesn't stop at the boundaries we set, the checkpoints we make, or the borders that we draw. Knox County wasn't the middle or the end, it was the opening act. A week later, there would be no one left to tell the story, because the government would collapse under riots, panic, and a virus that spread through the population faster than lies could keep up. There would be no more denials, no more spins, no more half-truths, because the truth was everywhere now, and it was in the very air itself. It's contained. It's always been contained. That's what they said. Right up until the airwaves fell silent, the checkpoints collapsed, and the virus spread past every border they had drawn on the maps. No, the only thing they contained was the truth. And that lie that they used to contain it died with them.